Hello, everyone, and welcome to So You Got a Gun. My name is Matt, and I'm joined by my co-host, Alex. Tonight, we're going to be talking about belts and holsters. But first, Alex has a quick safety brief for us tonight. Go ahead and take that away, Alex.
Hey, guys, how's it going? I'm Alex, and I'm going to do the quick safety brief for you guys. One second. It's the echo. All right, I apologize about that. I had a crazy echo going on in the background there. We're going to talk about a quick safety brief, which is the second NRA rule, which is always keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to shoot. So I think this is a pretty good rule. When I teach my classes, I try to teach to kind of keep your finger high as opposed to just running parallel to the trigger. If it's up nice and high like that, it just helps you get it up. It's a point to see that it's up out of the way for your instructor and for yourself. It's just kind of a good way to get used to doing that. So it's a pretty important lesson is you get that muscle memory down about keeping your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. And when in a stressful environment starts to interact with, then you won't be tempted to put that trigger on and possibly make a bad shot. Matt, go ahead. If not, we can bump on to the next spot.
Yes. Just to add to your finger high on off the frame onto the slide, it's something really cool about that is it sets off kind of an alarm in your brain that, I mean, it's not uncomfortable. It doesn't hurt, but it's just uncomfortable enough to where you realize this is something you're doing. So if you're a right-handed person, like 90% of you, you can put your trigger finger, your index finger, up into the ejection port area. If you're left-handed, like myself, you just do the best you can and find some kind of reference point. But yeah, great job, Alex.
Cool. So today we're going to be talking about holsters and belts. And I think, Matt, you've got some cool holsters that we're going to go over. But for a second here, I'm going to give you guys a bit of an update for what's going on with the podcast. And we're going to be looking at over the next couple of months here while we get things settled. We're in the process of getting everything settled for the iTunes. We've got a couple of loopholes and hoops we've got to jump through to get that accepted. It shouldn't take too much longer on that. So soon we'll be available on iTunes. We're also going to be working through getting us on Stitcher. For those of you guys who are using Google or an Android phone, we should be on Stitcher pretty soon. We're also going to be opening a website pretty soon here. I've got the URL and I kind of started fiddling with the build, but I'm kind of slow at that kind of stuff, so it takes me a minute to get things the way that I want them to be. So bear with us while that gets around. We've got the show URL, so the URL will be soyougotagun.com. That was pretty cool. I was fortunate enough to grab it. I was hoping it was going to be available. And we'll also be updating our Facebook page quite a bit and getting some more information on that and keeping that nice and live as best we can. As things go. For a while there, we'll probably just be posting articles that I'm reading or Matt's reading that we find interesting that we'll share with you and that we found that was kind of cool. And then maybe later on, we'll actually write our own. I'm not sure if I'll do that or not, but we'll see how it goes. So we're going to get off into the show here. If you guys are with us live, go ahead and drop some questions in the chat box, and we'll try to get to them as we go. And we'll answer them as we move through the show here. Our first part we're going to do is going to be about holsters. So Matt, why don't you hop in here and give us an idea of the different types of holsters we see on the market today?
All right. Well, there are all kinds of different things out there, but the most prevalent you're going to find are the holsters that are going to go on some kind of a belt, that are going to go either on the inside of your waistband or on the outside of your waistband. They're made out of a few different things. And there are a few things that are more prevalent than others. So there's the typical things will be leather, Kydex, or they will be injection molded. So another kind of polymer. Then there are the nylon holsters, which we've talked about briefly before in another episode, where they aren't for any specific gun per se. They're for a multitude of guns, and they're not maybe for they don't have a lot of retention. They don't keep a gun where maybe you want it. It's where these other holsters will have better retention to help you keep your gun in place.
Yeah, excellent. What kind of a holster do you normally carry with, Matt?
Lately, I've been using an injection molded holster, and to be honest with you, I can't even remember the name of this company. Somebody's going to see it and go, oh, I know exactly what that is. If I can get the light, there's the emblem. It's a dragonfly.
G-code, I think.
G-code, that's what it is. This is extremely comfortable. It's got some kind of a velvety finish to it on the outside, so it's comfortable against the skin. I don't know what I don't know the name of everything for all the holsters. I really don't. I'm sorry, but this clip actually helps push this into your body, your gun in the holster into your body a little bit more, so it gives you some standoff room, so you can get your hand in behind your gun and in front, so you can draw your gun. So this is really nice. I don't know what you call that clip on there, but it's fantastic. It hooks on the belt. I've never had it come off, not once. So I like that quite well.
That's actually G-code's design on that clip. That's an offset offset G-code clip, I think is what it's called.
And it keeps the gun, I mean, nice and tight right up to you, but not to a point where it's uncomfortable. It's really, really nice. I like it a lot. That was a gift from a buddy of mine. Very nice.
I had one on a holster for a while and really liked it. I unfortunately got it caught in a tree stand and broke it. So
bummer. Well, here is an example of a Kydex holster. So what this was at one point, this was just a flat sheet, like picture like a giant piece of construction paper. There are my hands. And what they do is they warm this up, and I mean, there are several different ways that these guys do this. They start out with, what are those little stovetop ovens? Can't remember what they're called. But
microwave oven.
No, well, it doesn't matter. But then they've got these great little presses that keep the material at a certain temperature, so they can work with this, and it's really pliable. But they just use a blue gun or a template gun, so they can block these out, and then they vacuum form these, or they press form these. These are really nice too. This one has a soft loop with a pull a dot on it, and it's very secure. I've never had any issue with this one either. I like this a lot. And with Kydex stuff, it seems like it's popping up all over the place. Like somebody else is opening up a Kydex hobby shop, like little Facebook business or internet store. I mean, all the time, everywhere. Any gun show you go to, there's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 12 guys that are doing something Kydex.
Yeah, I see Kydex quite a bit. It seems to be the most to use, so it's easy to get into, and a lot of guys kind of jump on board with it. It doesn't require anything expensive to make. You can do it with what's in your house. I've been some Kydex just playing around with it before, and I just used my oven and just kind of made a couple play toys, I guess, more than anything else. But it's pretty easy to get along with.
Toaster oven. That's the word. That's what I was looking for. Toaster oven.
There we go. Toaster oven.
Here's another one, and it's another Kydex holster, and it's got a just regular clip on it. And you'll see how this one is a lot higher here. This is for the same gun, and what this is a sweat guard. It just helps keep the gun standing off your body a little bit. It's just a little added layer of comfort. Some people really like it, and for me, it's neither here nor there, but it's important to some folks.
I've had both kinds of Kydex with sweat guards and high sweat guards and low sweat guards, and I tend to like them a little bit more just to keep the sweat off my gun than to worry about keeping the gun off of me more than anything else. So I think it kind of breaks down to personal preference on that. Sometimes I feel like the high sweat guards, the really tall ones, tend to poke a little bit more if you start bending around. So that's my input on that. Do you happen to have a high red holster over there, Matt?
I do. This is a a horsehide leather back, so it's really soft. It's comfortable against the skin, and then it's a Kydex holster part of it, and then it's got a couple of spring steel J clips on the sides. And this thing is extraordinarily comfortable to sit down in, go on a long drive, anything like that. But after it wears in, after the leather wears in the back, it doesn't have a lot of retention. And I found this out by having to climb in a bathroom window of my rental house, and my gun slid right up between my shoulder blades. That was the last time I wore this. But it's super comfortable. I wouldn't want to have to take off on a dead run with it or go head first through a window again.
Yeah, I have a hybrid that did the same thing. It took about a year and a half or so before mine really started losing its retention. And I did the same thing. I kind of set it aside and said, okay, it's not going to function for me any longer, and I'll switch to something else. But they're very comfortable. They're very comfortable. The only thing I think with the high section of leather is you can only wear that in your like 3 and 4 o'clock positions. If you try to go to appendix, that's so bulky that tends to be more binding and digs a little bit. That's kind of what I found. I don't have, and it works for them. But I found it to be kind of a little bulky and too much to kind of move around when I wanted to bend around a little bit. So,
yeah. I only wore mine on my left side behind the blade of my hip, so it would attach somewhere right around at my hip point, and then wrap around the back. And like I said, it's a great option, especially if you spend a lot of time in a vehicle or maybe in a desk. I don't know. Another type is, well, here's another injection mold, and a lot of people may or may not be familiar with this. It's the Black Hawk Serpa. And this has a paddle that goes inside of your pants. Let me see if I can. That goes inside your pants, and then this whole part where the gun obviously goes, this sticks on the outside. This hooks in underneath your belt. I'm sorry, in the inside of your pants, and it hooks in. There's a locking mechanism here, so it gives some added retention. That's about it for that.
I don't know.
There are some definite.
Do you want to talk about Serpas at all?
Here's the thing. There's a definite plus. I don't have a gun in front of me that will go in this. This locking mechanism works, but you draw with your, you use your index finger, your trigger finger to depress this lock, and as you're pulling the gun out, putting pressure down on this, the fingertip naturally wants to curl in, and if it curls in negligently too quickly, it gets you find your finger on the inside of your trigger guard on the trigger too quickly, and sometimes people have been known to negligently shoot themselves in the hind end. So another thing that somebody posted, and I think it was, I don't know, I think it was Craig Douglas, don't quote me, but they showed in a class where some dirt and sand and debris, whatever, got caught under this mechanism here, and they couldn't push the button down to get the gun out. So that was something that they said, hey, you need to really consider this and think about that. It's not that it's completely terrible, but it has some drawbacks. I wouldn't personally use this, but I wanted to show it because I know it's something that you can find in a lot of stores, Army surplus stores, some of the bigger box stores, and it's not an expensive option. And it seems like it's a great deal. But it takes some time, I think, before you realize it is or it isn't. And that's going to be a judgment call.
I think it takes some experience to learn how to use it. I think would be a good way to put it. If you're new to it, go out and practice with it. Make sure that you're getting a little bit under stress, and make sure that trigger finger isn't going in that trigger well like it shouldn't, I guess, is a good point. We had a question on the main page, and I'll figure we'll hit that up really quick. And it was, what kind of holster would you recommend for someone who is new to carrying, and why? So on my end, I tend to direct people towards a very lightweight, full Kydex holster with kind of a soft clip. In my opinion, I think a soft clip is a good place to start. It allows for more flexibility. You can carry it in multiple places. So like this is mine. Hold on, I got stuff popping up here. Come on, computer. Why are you being difficult? There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So this is mine. It's just a simple holster. There really isn't much to it. I have a soft loop on the side. It's got a lot of adjustability. What I like about it is there's not a lot of bulk to it. It's very slim. It's very small. There are smaller holsters. There's some really minimal holsters, but this is a really simple one. And you can carry this in pretty much any position that you'd like to carry it in. So I think that's a pretty good start for someone new to carrying. Just the availability of carrying it in 4 or 5 o'clock, in appendix. You can take the clip off, and if you're going to bag carry or off body carry, you can still use it for that kind of technique as well. And usually these are pretty inexpensive as well. And almost everybody makes something like this in some way. Matt, what do you think about that? What's a good first-time holster for somebody?
I agree. I mean, I like a Kydex holster. I've got a whole bunch of them. I'll get all different kinds of stuff too. High sweat guards, low sweat guards, different kinds of clips and loops, soft loops. And I have really become a big fan of the Ulti-Clip. And if people are not aware of what that is, it works a lot like, oh geez, darn it, the term just jumped right out of my head. What's the vice grips? Works a lot like how vice grips release. You push the lever down inside and everything pops open. Well, it's just the reverse of that. So here's our holster, and I have this at a cant here. So this rides behind your belt, okay? So the holster goes in the pants. This slips over the edge of the pants, and then you pop this clip down, and it locks everything in place. When I first saw this, I thought, oh, wow, that would be great for ladies that say, I don't even have a belt when I wear yoga pants, or when a guy says, well, I typically just wear sweats or basketball shorts or something like that. But even those professional folks that have to have a shirt tucked in, you can't have everything hanging out over your belt. You can still tuck a shirt in front of this, and this clip will hide behind your belt. So I like this a lot. I think it's a great option for people. And typically this Ulti-Clip is like a $10 or $15 upgrade for the hardware. I mean, it's a brand name thing. I don't think anybody else is reproducing one of these. So it's, as far as I'm aware, it's just this company. So it's, their patented deal. But I love these. I think they're great. Otherwise, yeah, I like this soft loop with a pull-a dot. They work great. And it's a way to get into a great holster that you're not spending $100 right off the get-go. I mean, you might spend $65 to $85, but it's not the end of the world. Getting yourself a really good quality holster.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to address is that there are all these holsters that we kind of go over that are on the market. They have purposes behind the way that they're designed. So when you look at a let me see, like a hybrid holster, that type of holster is designed purposely to be rode in that 4 or 5 o'clock kind of behind the hip position. The smaller ones, some of them are actually specifically designed to be carried appendix. They have the different cant to them, or they have different adjustments. There's a few of them out there that are quite large. I'm trying to think if it was T-Rex holsters that had like a double set. So it had a gun on one side and then a holster on the other that are specifically designed to ride as an appendix. So there's a lot of different holsters out there that have very specific purposes behind them. And for instance, the Serpa holsters was designed around the idea of military and police needing to have retention beyond just clamping down on the gun in case of somebody trying to pull the gun without permission or something along those lines. So I think there's a purpose behind each type of holster, and you have to kind of play that accordingly to the way you are. The situation that you're in is going to dictate what holster you're going to use. If you're wearing a lot of loose-fitting clothing, like the not loose-fitting clothing, but clothing that doesn't involve a belt, the Alti-Clip is going to work great for that. I've been looking at those. That actually looks pretty cool, and I want to try one out. You know, if you're deciding to carry off-body, there's a holster that's specifically designed for that. So when you're going to pick out a holster, keep that in mind. Look at what that holster is designed for. A lot of times they'll say right on there, you know, this one's designed for appendix carry. This one's designed for 4 or 5 o'clock hip carry. This one's designed to be open carried. There's a lot of that out there. There are some holsters that are specifically designed for things like deep carry or deep concealment. And once again, that is something that is very purposeful. And if, in my opinion, if you don't need that, then I would not suggest those, because they are very difficult to get to. They look like they're a cool idea, but they tend to add an extra step to your draw process. If you do have one, just train with it and train a lot. But I like to have a holster that's more easily usable, I guess, faster to get to, not something that you have to pull out of your pants and get to. A lot of those really deep concealment holsters were designed for undercover police and undercover FBI that needed to have it on them, but didn't necessarily need it to be on their hips. So they designed those for that reason. But keep that in mind when you're going to pick a holster out. Make sure you're getting one that's going to be appropriate for the way that you're going to carry.
Yeah. I don't really have anything to add to that. Yeah, I think you summed that up pretty well. If you are not carrying a holster that is specifically, you know, for deep carry like that, you want to be able to get your thumb, you know, behind the back strap of your gun. So you want to be able to get your thumb back here behind you like this, and then be able to get a good pinch on your gun, so you can get these fingers, you know, your fingers wrapped around the front of the frame and start pulling your gun up. If you're trying to fish for your gun with your index finger and thumb, it makes for a very slow draw, and it makes for a bad day. It takes a long time to get that gun out doing it that way. It's not that it can't be done. It's just there's no such thing as speed when you're doing it like that. So, you know, let's see, there are a couple of, I think I did cover pretty much. Oh, shoot. You know what? Here's something that a lot of people never really do, but it's something available. It's an ankle holster. Not my personal preference. I tried it out. Not a big fan. I'm sure that it's probably just takes some getting used to, but I don't even want to try. I'm honest. I will say this. The holster itself is very comfortable. But it's because there's this really great pad here. All the construction is great. This is a Galco holster, so you know this is not cheap. It's great leather. It's got a great Polidot strap on it. You know, this thing is made really, really well, and the gun stayed in place fantastically. It's just that I just didn't personally like it. But for what this is, it is fantastic.
Yeah, it's excellent. The other holster that I think we're both missing is the full leather holster. You see those a lot. I think. I can't remember the big manufacturer. Yeah, yep. There you go. The only downside to full leather holsters is that they can wear down over time, and those I've seen some leather that have actually flipped over and has the ability or possibility, albeit very slim, to contact the trigger. So when you're putting it back in the holster, that little flap could bend in. There's a couple good YouTube videos of guys showing you where that's been at. So my idea is, with leather holsters or any holster, is to inspect that holster on a regular basis. When you're picking up a holster and you're looking at it, making sure that where your connection screws are, that stuff is holding up. It's not cracking or breaking where your belt loop sinks in. That's not cracking or breaking, or your where everything anchors at isn't fracturing. And then with the leather, same idea, just making sure everything is where it's supposed to be at and it's not falling or loose or coming apart or stitching is falling out. And that's just a good idea with any of your gear that you carry on a regular basis, is to do we call it an I&I on inventory and inspect. But for holsters, it's something that I think is pretty important, making sure we're not cracking and breaking stuff.
Something that is really important with these leather holsters is, like Alex said, they wear. So it's kind of like leather furniture. It doesn't wear out, but it wears in. Well, with holsters, when they get worn in, they start to pancake. And if it's inside of your waistband and you find you have to start putting a finger or 2 fingers in here to open this clamshell up to get your gun in there, now you're putting one hand in the holster. Now you're trying to jam your gun, and that's a negligent thing right there. It's your responsibility level has gone way down. So at that point, that's when it is time to replace these. Hey, there's not much you can do to beat the comfort of a leather holster. It's just they do need to be replaced more frequently than, say, an injection molded or a Kydex. And then something else that Alex was talking about, I don't know if you can see this. See these yellow lines here on my holster? These are screws, and then I have my tensions everywhere how I want them, and then I just put a little paint pen mark. So if these 2 lines don't match up at some point, I can easily see it's a visual inspection. I just need to crank that down real quick. It's something that you can do once a week is probably a good idea. Just keep an eye on things like that, especially if it's something that you're using every day. Right, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I kind of diverse a little bit, when I get into my steel sights on my rifles, I witness mark all those things for the same reason. If they start to slide, you can easily look and see, hey, that line doesn't match up anymore. And I actually probably should do that with mine, because I don't have any witness marks on mine at all, actually.
So, it's fine. I did that while we were waiting to start the show. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I see how it is.
I'm showing you up, man.
Right. So we got another question on the YouTube page. It's, what are the pros and cons between the holster with a soft loop versus a holster with a clip like the Alti-Clip? And for my opinion, the soft loops, I don't have any experience with the Alti-Clip at all, but I have experience with a lot of different types of loops, like a soft loop or just a hard J-clip on metal J-clips. In my opinion, I like the soft loops a little bit better because they can actually flex a little bit. So it's attached to your belt, and I carry appendix. If I'm bending and moving and bobbing a little bit, that gives you a little bit of movement left and right and up and down to kind of give you a little bit more flex for that. Now, the downside is with a soft loop, in my experience, is that the draw when you go to pull tends to pull a little bit more on the soft loop than the a harder loop like the plastic J clips. I'd assume the Alti-Clip is probably like that a lot. What do you think about the Alti-Clip? Is that fair with the Alti-Clip, Matt? Will it stay in place, or does it move around like the soft clip does?
The Alti-Clip stays exactly where you put it. It clamps down on the fabric behind your belt, so there's not a lot of adjusting that once you clamp. I mean, it's super easy to unclamp it and slide it around, but once it's in there, it's clamped down.
How well does it move with you when you
it's great. You just again, when you have things like you can adjust for a cant. So if you're riding it like not directly in the middle, but just off to the side one way or the other, and your body is we're not stick figures. We have contours to our body. I know I do. How do you keep that boyish figure? I know I do. So I love it, man. I mean, here's another thing. it depends. Your comfort ability. Oh, well, comfort is a relative term when you're talking about holsters, especially if you're talking about inside of the waist. And what we've been talking about, the majority of everything is inside of the waist. So maybe we should make that very clear. Is I almost never, ever, ever wear my gun on the outside of my pants, just because I like to keep that hidden. I like to keep to myself that I'm carrying and wearing a gun. But yeah, this is great. This is fantastic. Though I do like a soft loop. So really, it's a preference. It comes down to preference. If you can dress completely casual, t-shirt and jeans, there's nothing wrong with a soft loop at all. But if you've got a family function or something to go to where you're even remotely dressed up, the Ulti-Clip is a great option, because you don't have to wear you can wear a dress belt, and it doesn't have to be a gun belt. So as long as your belt is, that's what I was going to say. You can't wrench your belt down when you're carrying a gun inside of the waistband, because then it's complete discomfort. You have to give yourself a little bit of leeway. So yeah, you have to be able to move around a little bit inside of your pants. So you're just you're just going just past where you have contact. You're feeling just a little bit of push against your body. You're not wrenching that sucker down.
Absolutely. I found with a Penix carry that I tend to wear my belt looser than I normally would, just because it seems to be a little bit more comfortable. One of the things I want to talk about is, we get into holsters, there's a wide range of quality that you're going to see across the holster industry. You're going to see holsters that, the hybrid holsters, like the Kydex front with a leather backing. There's a lot of manufacturers of that type of holster. There's manufacturers that sell them for $30, and there's manufacturers that sell them for $150. And in my experience, I mean, I got a bucket full of holsters. I think I've got 20 or 30 of them floating around someplace. Matt, I bet you've got a bunch floating around. You end up finding ones or two that you like more than the others. But what I found in the holster is that you do end up paying for quality. So if you're buying something that's on the cheaper side, understand it's on the cheaper side. Not only is it cheaper on the financial side, it's also cheaper on the manufacturing side as well. So keep an eye on that product. Make sure that you're not seeing cracks and breaks and fractures, or screws are staying in place that you need to stay them in place. I suggest a lot too, once you realize where your holster is going to fit, is to use a little bit of blue Loctite, or a little bit of like clear nail polish that helps seize the screws up a little bit, and they won't come out on their own. That's a pretty good little trick to kind of keep things where they're supposed to be at. The other thing about quality holsters that you get into, the farther up the line you get, if you start to look at holsters and their design, and I kind of look at this in two different ways. Is I've seen a couple guys who will do Kydex folded holsters while you wait at gun shows. And there really isn't anything that's wrong with those. They're going to hold your gun. They're going to protect your trigger, which is a really important part of the holster. But what doesn't go into those, simple bent Kydex holsters is a lot of research and technology. There's a lot of holster manufacturers that are putting a lot of time into researching how the body moves, how the holsters fit, how they act, and then applying that to the way their holsters are designed. So if you're say wanting to carry a Penix, and you go out and you buy a cheaper holster and it doesn't work because it's not fitting very well, it's not very comfortable, it may actually be the holster. The one company that we're not associated with at all, but this just comes to mind because I know they're pretty innovative in this, a company called Filster. They've been integrating a wedge into the back of their holster to kind of push the gun away a little bit. It's pretty cool, but it's research and technology. So you kind of get that when you start dealing with the higher up you get, you start seeing more and more of that research and technology pay off in the holster. So, Matt, you got anything about the quality in the holster industry?
I sure do, especially anything you get into with one of the the hybrid holsters like this. The cheaper ones, I'm not going to go throwing out name brands, because whatever you have, I don't care what it is, as long as it works for you. But the less expensive ones, the leather quality typically isn't there, and it's not as comfortable. It just isn't. But if you're not carrying the gun for all day, then hey, it's fine. Just make sure that it's something you can deal with. But realize that if by saving yourself $20 or $30, you're not getting the comfort that you really probably want. Now, I realize that carrying a gun doesn't require comfort, but if you can pay for the added comfort, having a better quality leather that breathes a little bit or doesn't make you sweat like crazy, it's completely worth it. I mean, it is for me, and I realize that it's already not cheap to go buy a new gun. It's not cheap to go buy maybe an extra couple of magazines, and then you want to buy some ammunition so you can go shoot it at the range. And then, oh geez, oh Pete, now I have a holster I've got to buy. You're anywhere between $50 and $120 or $150, whatever. But realize that the money you spend on a holster is going to, like Alex said, it's going to research and design, and so the R&D portion of it, and then it's what are the quality of the materials. So yeah.
All right, cool. Well, we're going to give our final thoughts here on the holsters and then move on to the second part of the show, which is going to be belts. The one thing I wanted to point out that I think is really, really important, one of the most important aspects of a holster is making sure that you have complete coverage of your trigger. And that's vital. Whether or not you're carrying with a round of the chamber or a safety gun or a non-safety gun, it doesn't really matter. That's the thing that makes the gun operate. We've got to cover this up. We've got to act as if this is a secondary safety or a first safety, depending on what kind of gun you're carrying. So when you're looking at holsters, if you're not seeing a full trigger cover, I would steer away from that holster. The other thing I wanted to kind of say is the soft holsters, like the neoprene holsters that are just folded neoprene. We talked about them at the beginning of the show. They have a little plastic clip on the side of them. They are soft-sided, and they could potentially have a negligent fire from something as simple as a stick of chapstick. That's hard enough and soft enough that it could lever down through the holster and fire your gun. So it's just something to think about. I'm not saying don't get one or not get one. I'm not a huge fan because I think there's problems where you could fire it with a stick of chapstick, or you could do something like that. The other thing I wanted to bring up before I quit this one is when we talk about off-body carry a little bit, a lot of people just like to take a gun and toss it in their purse or toss it in their bag. I still encourage to have it in a holster of some kind. And there are holsters that are specifically designed for off-body carry that just cover the trigger and then have a little lead string and a clip. So you can stick that in your bag, and when you grab a hold of the gun and pull, that little lead string and the clip pulls that holster off, and you can ready to rock. But you're still maintaining the coverage of the trigger while it's rolling around in your bag.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. That really, honestly, it should have been the very first thing we said. The whole point of this is to make sure that the trigger is covered. The last thing you ever want to do is take a gun that's loaded, chambered or not, and put it on your belt or inside of your belt or in a book bag, purse, body, carry bag, whatever. That is a danger waiting to happen. So yeah, good on you. I can't believe that wasn't the very first thing we said. The whole point of the holster is, yes, to have it on your body, but it is to cover the trigger. My final thoughts on this, on the holsters, is it's a trial and error thing. It really is. You're going to find that you're going to have one gun, you're going to have 2, 3, 4, 5 different holsters for it. That's just how it's going to be. You're going to have to try a couple out, talk to people that you know that carry a gun as often or hopefully more often than you, and see what works for them, especially somebody that has a similar body type as you. If it's outside of the waistband, you want it on the outside of your pants, that's fine. Just make sure you have a holster that is good for that. And same thing with the inside of the waistband. So that's my thought. Those are my final thoughts on holsters for tonight. Alex, we're going to move into belts now.
Yep, I think so. Let me check the chat real quick and make sure no one said anything about the holsters before I get going any farther. And yep, it looks okay. So yeah, we're going to move on to belts. And it's kind of funny, when I first started getting into carrying, the best piece of advice I ever heard from anybody was the 3 Gs. And I always laugh about it now, but it's a good gun, a good belt, and a good holster. So I kind of thought that was funny, but it kind of makes sense as you get into it. And for the longest time, when I first started carrying as a new gun carrier, I did not carry with a good holster or a good belt. And I can tell you that by experience, it's extremely embarrassing to use the restroom and drop your gun into the stall next to you. So retention in a holster is important, and a non-stretched out belt is also important. So I'm glad Matt is muted because he's laughing his tail off right now. So that's a pretty important aspect. And what happens with belts is there's a couple different types that you have out there. There's ratcheting belts. I can't think of what they're called. They're like the old army belts that where you slide the band in and then it has a tensioner that falls back on it. Those are pretty cool belts. There's a lot of different little mechanisms to hold, whether it's a single loop or the old standard just kind of loop through one itself. My personal favorite is a ratcheting belt. There's a couple different manufacturers, but essentially you have a ratcheting piece and there's ratchets on the bottom of that, and they simply just click and locks. And then to undo it, you just lift up on the trigger. There are several different ways that works, but that's my personal favorite. For one, is that ratchet isn't going to let go. I think I put a couple 100 pounds in this belt, and it's never once let go. But the kind of the idea behind the belts is that you're looking for the base platform for what you're carrying your gun on. And if you're using a belt from a leather belt that you find in your average big box store, they're usually not thick enough, and they're also not stiff enough. And that stiffness of that belt is really important. It takes strain off of your hips. So if you're carrying on one side or the other, if you carry it with a lighter belt without the stiffness, it tends to pull on sides. It ends up cutting off circulation on one side or the other because it flexes and it's too stiff for that kind of thing. So that's sort of how that works. Matt, you got any other belts with you that you can show off?
I have a few. I have one just like you were just showing. Well, they're on the floor now. Okay. This is what you see a lot of people with. Oh my goodness, I have to put this under my headphones. This is a rigger's belt because of this buckle that you've got here. These are super stiff. They're really good for carrying a gun inside or outside of the waistband. You can put a pair of pants on these and then just hold the belt buckle and it'll hold the pants up just like this. I mean, these things are double layered scuba webbing from this particular company. And I've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 of these. They're great. They also have one where you've got, again, the double layered scuba webbing, and it's got some loops here. There you can see them now. Some loops and a hook. So this also feeds through belt loops much easier. With the rigger's belt, you've got to take one end of the buckle off, feed it all the way through, put the buckle back on. That's not a big deal. It just takes some getting used to. And then you've got your regular leather gun belt. Now, the difference between a leather gun belt and the belt you would buy at whatever jeans, whatever store at the mall or Walmart or whatever, gun belts, from what I understand, they are from back leather, back hide, and then the fashion belts are made from belly leather. It's nice and soft and supple. So if you're going to do leather, make sure you do a leather gun belt. It's going to be back hide. So with these stiffer, like webbing belts, what they're really great for is, I mean, they're great for, like I said, either inside the waistband or out, but they really shine when you have weight on the outside of the belt. So if you have, it doesn't matter, big gun or small, over time, you start getting a pulling away from your body. So let me show you here. So it's eventually, you get this weight pulling away, and then it just strains around your hips, and it gets completely uncomfortable, and you get a lot of hot spots. And that's a surefire way to see somebody stop carrying a gun when they're not using the proper belt.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen some of the nice leather belts I've seen in the market now actually have a band of flexible metal in them. There's a few companies out there that are doing that. And I've had one, and I wore one for a while, and I actually really liked it. It was very stiff, but what I thought was really nice about that was you could wear that in a formal occasion, and it didn't look out of place. I could wear my suit and put that belt on. It still remained nice and shiny outside with this nice stiff metal core than the inside, and it worked out pretty well. My fear, which is unfounded, I have yet to actually hear of one happening, but that metal actually coming out and like cutting you or something like that. But I wore one for about a year and a half and never had that happen. It didn't really even wear out. So I thought it was a pretty good belt. I think I gave it to my dad.
Nice. This one, I know we're not really talking about name brands or anything tonight, but this one in particular, I think I've had this for 10 or 12 years. I mean, and I wear this thing a lot. If I might not wear it with, I might not wear it every day around the house, but at least half the time I'm wearing it at work. And I mean, it's beat up, but I'm telling you what, it still holds a gun exactly where it should if I actually, decide to use this while I'm carrying a gun, which, I can't carry a gun at work. So I don't really need a gun belt at work, but it sure is comfortable, and I use it all the time, so I'm used to it, so I just stick with it. But I've had no issues. I've had 3 from that company. I've liked every one of them, but I've used and abused that one, and it's no issues at all.
Awesome. So the next subject matter we're going to get into with belts is, you see there's a lot of different kinds out there. It is a lot of trial and error too. I've had a bunch of different belts, and I finally found one that just fit what I like. But there's also belts that are driven with a purpose. If you're going to do competition shooting, there are belts that are driven for that purpose that are, I'm not really sure if they're what the rig belt, I think, is what they're referred to. And they're a lot wider and much stiffer and bigger because you're holding, not only do you have a gun, but you have several magazines, and it's usually going over top of your clothing as opposed to through the belt loops. But that's for a specific purpose. And the same thing goes with any of the rest of the belts. If you're carrying, if you're not in formal attire, there are belts for that. And if you are in formal attire, there are belts for that. And occasionally there are belts that fit both of those needs. It just kind of depends on your situation and what you're going to be buying. The web belt, there's a lot of different types out there, but I've seen a few that are just the nylon, single layer nylon belts that come with, there's several manufacturers that just provide those with your pants. Those are pretty good, but they're still really flexible. So unless they're the double webbed that actually have a rigidity to them, that single webbing isn't really ideal. It'll work for a little while, but it's going to eventually kind of not stretch out, but it's such a flexible thing that by the end of the day, your hips are not feeling too good and you've got some circulation starting to get shut off because the rigidity just isn't there.
Right. Yeah. They're single web belts. Yeah, single layer web. Was what the ones you were talking about with the buckle where you pull with the retention. Those are fine for just holding your pants up. They're great, but not so much when you're trying to carry any amount of weight. Doesn't matter if a gun would be on the inside or on the outside of your pants. It's just, you need something that really puts pressure all the way around instead of on like one hot spot where your gun might be.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other really popular belts out there are the, I was going to let you know, well, in my experience, Matt, the riggers belts are the belts that have the extra loop in the buckle. And they're specifically for guys who do like rigging for stages. So they're looping ropes through there for safety, to keep them from falling off the catwalks. And that kind of got adapted to the gun world because they were very stiff and large belts. And they kind of said, well, hey, these work too. But usually they have an extra, like either a triangular loop right where you buckle in that you can loop a rope through to emergency do things with. If you're belaying somebody or something like that, you can use that as a belay point. But those are good belts. I had a looped riggers belt for a long time that worked great. The one thing that I want to point out about belts is they scream tactical if you're not careful. And it is your opinion on how you want to be, but I tend to try to be as gray man as possible. I don't really want people to realize that I'm carrying a gun, so I tend to side with things that don't look tactical to me. I don't get the big beefy belts and carry a lot of camo and stuff like that just to kind of avoid that situation. But so that's something to consider depending on your environment or your situation. You may want to steer away from the heavier duty big nylon belts because they kind of do scream, hey, I might have a gun on me, as opposed to one of the leather belts that might be a little bit more appropriate for the environment that you're in.
Yeah, that's true. Something I don't think we mentioned was you're typically going to look at two different sizes of belts, width-wise, or how high they stand. So your typical belt is a 1.5 inch web belt. The riggers belt, like Alex was talking about, typically those are 1 3/4. Now those aren't going to fit through the belt loops on most of your regular pants that you're going to wear. At least that's what I have found. So no, you like when you buy a holster, when you order one or you have one made, you want to know what size belt you have. They don't care about how big around your waist is. They want to know how tall it is. So typically you're going to have a 1.5 inch high as opposed to the 1 3/4. So it's important to know because you've got to fish a belt through that loop or that clip. Same with anything like this that has loops built into the actual body of the holster. So it's just something to think about. So know what size, what height your belt is.
Yeah, absolutely. I made that mistake. I ordered the wrong size and realized it doesn't go through my jean loops. Like, wait a minute, that's not what I wanted. Luckily, a really good belt manufacturer is going to just be like, oh yeah, sure, send it back and we'll send you the right size. I don't remember who I ordered one through that was the wrong size, and they were just like, yeah, no problem, bring it back and we'll get you the right size. The next subject we are going to be is about quality of belts. We kind of went over that with the holsters. I don't see a lot of quality differences in belts. Usually if somebody's making a gun belt, it's pretty much equal par for gun belts. I don't think I've really seen a whole lot of gun belts on the market that are, I would call cheap. I think the cheapest one I ever owned was about $45, and it was just as good as the one that I owned that was $100. As far as quality, I felt like the stitching was really the same, and the Velcro was the same, and the buckles were the same. As far as the way they were designed and made and built, wasn't the same design buckle, but as far as the quality of the buckle, seemed like it was a really good buckle. But that is something to consider. The only thing I can think of that I've seen that kind of makes me a little bit concerned about the quality is I go to a lot of gun shows, and there's always a booth at the gun show that's selling $20 leather belts that are kind of trying to tell you that they're gun belts. And they may or may not be great. I've never owned one. But when you go to look at those, if that is something you're looking at, like Matt did with his belts, put it in a ring and see if you can, how stiff that belt is. Is it able to set out? Is it able to flex? Is it going to droop? Is it thick? Is it light? Is it look like it's really imperfection? Is there a lot of imperfection in the leather? A lot of the leather belts, the quality comes from the leather. And if you look at that leather quality, sometimes they have legitimate barbed wire scarring, and that leather is a lot cheaper. Well, that barbed wire scarring can break and fracture and eventually snap on the belt. So that's something to consider when you're looking at those belts. I don't know if they're right or wrong. I don't have one, but just consider that when you're looking at them. What's the quality look like? Do they look like they're going to hold up? Do they have enough tension and rigidity that they're going to stay where they need to stay? How does the metal look on the buckle? What kind of buckle is it? Does that metal look tough? Does it look like it's going to bend, break? Is it going to stay put? Use your best judgment on that kind of stuff. So I wanted to see if we had any other live questions here. And pull open the thing. So I think we kind of went over the live question already. The question was, what's the difference between a leather gun belt and a nylon gun belt? I think we handled that one pretty much for the most part.
Yeah.
You got anything to add to that, Matt?
No, but real quickly, in case that person missed it, typically a nylon gun belt, or I'm sorry, were we talking about belts? I've been staring at holsters.
Belts, holsters.
Yeah. A nylon gun belt. Is that what we were talking about?
Yeah. What's the difference between a leather and a nylon gun belt?
Well,
looks,
rigidity depends. It depends on the nylon too. What kind of nylon is it? Some of these companies, this particular company, and I don't know about all of them, but this one that I use, they use scuba webbing and they double layer it up, and then they stitch that up. The big part of those belts is the stitching. The nylon or the webbing, it's pretty much the same all the way around. What you're getting into is the craftsmanship of the belt. Leather belts, again, they tend to look more casual day to day, and they're more versatile as far as your clothing goes. I mean, that's really the big difference. I do think that the webbing belts, I do think that they hold your gun in place better if you're carrying on the inside of your waistband, and if you're carrying it on the outside of your waistband, it really holds your gun in place really well, because there is not the natural flex to that stuff that leather has. No matter how tough the leather is, there is that natural suppleness to it, even if it is, back hide.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some weird belt materials out there. I've seen guys that have Kevlar belts. There's some weird ones out there. Mine is actually rubber. I don't know if you can see that very well in the picture. It's not leather, even though it sort of looks like it's leather. This is kind of the stuff that they make drive belts out of for some of the machinery. It's really, really tough, and it actually looks pretty good. It keeps a nice shine, and it's molded to look kind of like it's a black leather to it, but it's actually rubber reinforced with nylon in the inside of it. But for me, I think it's a great fit. It's got enough flexibility that it still works with me, but it's stiff enough that it holds the gun where I want. I know if I'm going to be doing a lot of walking and hiking, I tend to go up to more of a rigid belt, like the double thick nylon, just because I know I'm going to be out a lot more, moving around a lot more, and that definitely keeps my gun where I want it to be at.
Yeah, I've got the the same belt you're just talking about. And I like it fine. I think it's great for inside of the waistband carry. I wouldn't want to carry a gun on the outside of my waist with it. I just don't think it has, I don't think that's not what this is designed for. I mean, look at it. It
just
doesn't hold.
Floppier.
Because that's the design. It's your gun stays in perfect place when it's inside your waist, but it's not, especially on the blade of your hip on the outside of your pants. It's just not the one.
Yeah, and it's the situation dictates kind of deal again.
Right.
If you're carrying this way, that's the belt you're going to use. If you're carrying this way, you want to head more towards a stiffer belt. So if you're carrying on the inside of the waistband, a little bit of a more flexible belt is okay. If you're carrying on the outside of the waistband, then a stiffer belt is going to be more preferable. But you don't want to go so light or so loose that it doesn't work for you.
Right. I think that's about it. So final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's really, I think we covered all the bases on that. My final thoughts is, if you are a new person to firearms and you're carrying and you don't really think it's that comfortable and you're not using a gun belt, I would suggest a gun belt before you quit carrying. And then also switch up holsters and see if that helps as well.
I agree. And typically the cheaper, less expensive fix will be, let's see if your holster is good first. Eventually you might end up with one good leather belt and one good nylon web belt. I mean, I've got 5 of them. I just like them. I've got several of the leather belts. So it just like your holsters, it's going to be, I want to switch it up. I want to do something different. I want whatever colors, whatever look, for whatever reason. It's just like, how many pairs of tennis shoes do you need? I got 5, for instance, just whichever ones I feel like having that day. So, I think the belt, though, it's very important, because I've said this before. It is the foundation on which you carry your self-defense. So it has to be right, it has to be comfortable. And if you only want to buy one, and you want to know that you're going to get the best bang for your buck, I would definitely, my opinion, I would go with the web belt from a reputable manufacturer, and don't go with anything crazy colors or pattern wise. Just get something that's neutral so it will work for your wardrobe, right? And go with that. And I don't think you'll be sorry. And then later, if you want to get a leather belt, do that.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good call. Those nylon belts, they last you forever. They'll probably outlast you and your son.
Right. As long as you don't eat too much at Thanksgiving, you'll be all right.
That's why I just get like a size bigger. I'll be all right.
Be able to wrench those down. Oh, something that's important when you order those belts, unless you're at a place where you can try them on, okay? When you order them, order the actual pant size that you wear. Don't order like how long the belt is that you bought from the Buckle or the Walmart or whatever. Order from the pant size on your pants. That is the best way to do it. And this is coming from a friend of mine that owns a company where they make those belts, 1,000 of them a week minimum. The biggest problem they have is, well, somebody will say, I measured myself around, or I measured the belt that I have. And that's actually not. We have what do they call it? Vanity sizing. If you have a 32-inch waist, you don't really have a 32-inch waist. So it's the truth. But seriously, it's a good little tip to know. But those are final thoughts and tips from me.
Yeah, I don't have much to add for it. I think that's pretty true. The belts I've always had have always been pretty darn adjustable. So I just got the size of the pants that I wore, and it always seemed to work really well. For me, when I carry, I always get a size bigger anyway, just to leave myself a little bit of extra room to move my gun where I want it to, or kind of size it around if I want to move So I always just do the same thing. I get the size of pants that I'm wearing at that time, which unfortunately is getting bigger and bigger. Apparently, I need to go on a diet. At least that's what my wife keeps telling me. Yeah, that's pretty much my final thoughts. Like I said, if you're going to be carrying and you're uncomfortable with it, try a belt, try a different holster, try a different position, and give it a shot. If that doesn't work for you, then we'll try to figure it out. Message us. We'll see if we can help you out if we can. Yeah, that's our final thoughts. We're gonna put this up. Thank you for joining us for our live broadcast. I'm gonna make sure we don't have any extra questions before we take off here. Okay, yeah, we got one more question here. What style belt closure would you recommend for a nylon belt? Kobo buckle or G-hook style?
Okay, I have both. Here's the thing. If you ever said, oh my God, I can't get this belt undone quickly enough to use the restroom, you don't want the G-hook. No, it's no joke. On the flip side of that, if you get bothered by, I'm going to knock something on the floor again, not being able to fish, gosh darn it, this end through your belt loops, you've got to take this off the other end of the belt, clip it back in, and then fish your nylon through. It's not a big deal. It just takes a couple seconds. But if that becomes bothersome to you, then go with the G-hook. Otherwise, I only have the one G-hook. I've worn it twice. So that's about all I have for that. I like these. Or go with, well, we haven't said the name of this company yet, so we'll have to wait on that.
I'm going to make a phone call about that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm a Cobra buckle guy myself. I'm trying to think of the company or the style that feeds through and then you pull it tight with a little cam lock in it. That a lot of nylon belts use. It was an old Army style for a while. There's a specific manufacturer out there that uses it. I like those a lot because they have pretty much infinite adjustability. So you can adjust it a little at a time. There's the right spot, as opposed to having like a preset location. But with the Cobra buckles, it's also a Velcroed strap, so you can kind of let it go and get that right location. I like the Cobras because they come off easier, like you said, than the G hooks are a little tougher to get off when you need to get them off.
I do have one question that popped up. Somebody messaged me this, but it's back about holsters. It is on the topic of holsters. Can you talk about attachments? Describe a wedge, wing, and the different guard options. Maybe discuss some of the suboptimal thing that can happen, like gun rolling over the top, hybrid holsters. I think we covered most of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
The only thing I don't really
just wanted to make sure we got it up there
was the like the wing attachments and the wedges. So on mine, that black piece right here is a wing, or I think this is actually they call it a claw. And what this is designed to do is your belt goes through here, and this pushes on the belt when you tighten it up, and it pushes the grip of your gun into your stomach a little bit more, and basically makes that hide a little bit better. Then there are some that have wedges, and so basically down here at the bottom there would be a little wedge or a extra piece that would push the gun this way, which then in turn would push it more into your hip or your stomach, sort of like the G-code clip does on Matt's G-code. It's just a different mechanism. I've seen a lot of different types of these, and you either love them or you hate them. I've had a couple of really expensive holsters that had all sorts of fancy wings and clips and claws, and I didn't care for them. I like just the single, and I don't like a wedge. That's just my opinion. But it might work for you. So just there's a few manufacturers that actually make kits that have all of them, and you can kind of build a holster. That might be a way to go. They're expensive, but at least you have all the options. But most of those things are designed specifically to make the gun print less. So by printing, I mean when you put your shirt over top of the firearm, it doesn't show the outline of the gun through your shirt. So they're made there to like push it in a little bit farther or change the angle the gun sits to make it disappear under your shirt a little bit better, is kind of the idea behind the majority of those little add-ons and attachments.
Okay, cool.
Yep, I don't think I have any questions. Let me check my other.
Somebody sent me that on my personal, so I just saw it last second.
I was just seeing if I had anybody watching that was personal too. Nope, it looks like it's about it. Let me check the Google page real quick, make sure. Somebody says hello, McDreamy.
Who is that?
Matt Flores.
Baker?
No, Flores.
Oh, Flores. Hey, Flores, what's up, dude?
All right. Well, I think that ties us up for episode 3. Once again, stick around for us for a while we get things settled in for the podcast. Look for us on iTunes and share us if you like. Check us out on Facebook at So You Got a Gun, and the URL will be up soon at soyougotagun.com. Keep an eye open for that. Once it's out of the build form, then we'll have stuff up there. And keep coming back. Hopefully we'll have good information. And like always, we really appreciate all the feedback. So keep it coming.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great one.